Painting water often feels complex and unpredictable, but with a more direct use of color, it becomes a little bit clearer. And it always begins with seeing. Join me as I paint this quiet seascape. Welcome back. It's good that you can join me again. As promised last week, this week's video I want to focus on color. More specifically, how we actually see color as painters. Because when we're out painting a scene like I'm showing you here, on the right is the photo reference that I'll talk about throughout this video, and on the left, as usual, I have my finished painting. What usually happens when you approach a scene like that, it's very easy to get caught up in the idea of the object, the water, sky, waves, and start naming things instead of really observing them. So this week's video I really was supposed to put out a while back, as it's fundamentally the most important thing for us as artists, and that is our ability to see individual shapes, individual color. So fundamentally, what we do as artists is something quite different than, I suppose, every other normal person. But again, we're not painting objects, we're responding to how light is falling across individual form and how it breaks, shifts, and reveals those objects, trees, buildings, sky, and in my case, water, through color. And that requires a bit of shifting, I think, in the way we think. So what I've decided for this week, as mentioned last week, I want to delve a bit deeper into how I see things and how I put down color individually and directly. So last week we talked about detail and how we can use our substrate and subsequent layers to pull some of the details and reveal themselves to us. I talked about chasing details, that concept of chasing details. Here it's much more direct, more calculated. So I'm going to approach this in a more direct way, looking for relationships, temperature shifts, and what we might call broken color, allowing small variations to sit next to each other and do the work. Again, revealing details, revealing form. So that's a long-winded intro into this video. That's not that long, but I want to try my best to describe how I see color and how I approach it. Again, on the left, bottom left, is the finished painting, which, by the way, I was quite happy with. And on the bottom right is just a photo that I used. It's just from last year's vacation of overlapping waves as the sun was setting. So, on to color. Alright, so before we even begin thinking about color, I wanted to start with something, I guess, even more fundamental, and that's how we simplify what we're looking at. When most people approach water, they immediately get overwhelmed. There's obviously movement, there's detail, there's constantly shifting landscape, and a lot of times the instinct is to try to follow all of that. But that's usually when things start to fall apart. So instead, what I'm looking for are larger underlying shapes, the structure beneath all of that activity, if you want. Even in something as fluid as water, there's organization. There are bands, there are directional flows, there are areas of light and areas of shadows that usually group together. And if you step back and squint, like I always mention on my channel, you'll start to notice that what feels complex at first actually begins to settle into a few dominant shapes. For my painting here, for example, you can begin to see that we have waves themselves form a kind of horizontal band that move across the surface. Beneath it, the shallower water becomes a broader, quieter shape, and even within the foreground, where things start to break apart and there's less water and more sand, there's still a sense of grouping areas that sort of belong together. So in reality, there's three large horizontal bands, and I think this is that idea, that concept of editing as artists that I talk about a lot on my channel, that you have to do yourself if you're working from photos, of course, and in real life you need to edit down as to what exactly is your message and how you want to convey it. So the idea isn't to draw everything out or block everything in rigidly, but rather to hold on to that sense of simplicity as you build. Because once you have that underlying structure, those large areas that are sort of defined, everything else becomes much more manageable. Once we begin to understand the painting in terms of larger shapes, the next step, and really the more difficult one, is learning to see color accurately. And this is where most people struggle, including myself. If you look at the reference photo here on the right, especially in the foreground sand, it's very easy to simplify it mentally and say, that's just brown or cool gray. And once you do that, you're already lost a lot of the information that's actually there. I find myself over these years, you look at some reference photo or working from life, a certain color reads as something and the next day it's reading as something entirely different. So seeing color, this is something you're likely gonna, I don't want to say struggle with, but certainly maybe shift over time as you get good at it. The first thing that I ask myself when looking at a shape of a certain color to determine it is it leaning more in the cooler or in the warmer side of things. So instead of placing one flat brown, for example, for that sand in the front, I'm looking for a range within the same value scale. So subtle shifts that still belong together as shapes but have variation in hue. I'm not sure if that made sense to you guys, but certainly if throughout this video you find something confusing or you need clarifications, note it down below and I'll get to it. So as an example, if I determine that this area sits more on the cooler side, for example, this sand part in the front, I might introduce notes of cooler greens, maybe muted blues, which can be, warmer or cooler, or even cooler reds like alizarins or magentas, all within a similar value range. So I'm not describing objects, but I'm giving life to that surface. You may notice that I'm using the same brush virtually throughout this painting, and that's somewhat deliberate as it's part of this video tutorial lesson. Although if I was painting this scene again, I may introduce larger brushes, but this was supposed to be as a demo to indicate how you can describe a plane with individual small little cues of color, as opposed to just doing larger washes, or as you see me usually use those large putty knives. So in the end, if everything becomes a local color, that's a very popular term online, so sand is brown or water is blue, you end up with something that feels flat and somewhat predictable. But when you begin to see how color is influenced by light, by surrounding areas, of course by reflections, then you start to build something much more convincing. Even within the water itself, you'll notice it's not just one color. There are warmer passages where the light hits, cooler notes where the water, of course, churns as you see me put those highlights over those breaking waves. And all of that is shifting constantly. So that's one of the reasons we always work from photos when we're painting water. But it still kind of holds together as one unified shape if, of course, you've got that first step down, introducing proper large mass shapes. So as I'm working across the surface here, placing these small notes, I'm constantly asking, how does this color relate to the one beside it? And that's kind of why I'm working kind of systematically across the surface and not jumping around too much, because I'm evaluating color beside the previous one that I've just placed. And I'm asking, is it warmer? Is it cooler? Is it the right color? And maybe I didn't include it in this video, there was some erasing as well. You put down a color note, and if it's not right, it'll kind of stick out, and you just have to remove it. And that's really what it comes down to, because once you start seeing that way, the painting begins to take care of itself, and the form appears on its own. So once the structure is in place and we've started to understand our color relationships, the next step is really how to apply that color, and this is where the broken color comes into play. If you're trying to work with these small distinct notes of color, as I call them, the biggest issue you'll run into is mud, as it's very likely familiar, most of you, if you work with oils, that is, of course. And that usually comes from overmixing or from using tools that aren't clean. In my case, I'm keeping things very simple. I'm working primarily, as I said, with one brush, and I'm mixing directly on the palette using a spatula brush or a palette knife, and sometimes even applying with them as well. The key is that I'm not overworking the paint. I'm mixing just enough to arrive at the color and then placing it down. You don't see it here. The next, of course, step after virtually every stroke is stepping back and evaluating how it sort of gels and works with the rest of the ones that I've already applied. However, if your brush is carrying too many previous colors, everything starts to collapse into a brown or a neutral. So I'm constantly wiping the brush, resetting it in a way, and making sure that each note I put down has some level of clarity. And this same goes for how I organize my palette on the right. I don't normally use a stand-up palette like that. It's usually in front of me, but for these sorts of videos I've chosen to do that. I keep my warms generally grouped to one side along the left, as you can see there, and my cools along the top. And within that, I'm not limiting myself to just one red or one blue. I usually have cool red, cool green, cool blue, and then the same on the warmer side. And that gives me flexibility in a way. So when I'm placing a color, even within something that might read as brown or green, I can pull from different families without losing control of the overall temperature. And that's really the goal that I'm after here, to keep each colored note that I put down as clean and intentional as possible, so that when they sit next to each other, they don't turn into mud, they start to build structure, variation, and in a way life. So these broken color strokes that I'm applying are essentially calculated in many ways. You are, as I mentioned, applying paint based on what you're noticing, what you're observing, putting down, and then leaving it as such. There's virtually no blending that went on with this particular painting. There's a little bit of that on the left there, but for the most part, the color is calculated, placed down, and it's left as such. And then, if everything is done correctly, by the end of it, the viewer's eyes will basically optically connect all those little small individual notes into something that's cohesive, that read as, well, in my case, water. One quick note: if you are working in this kind of approach, or you intend to do that, try to fight the urge to blend or blur lines. It's very tempting to soften everything out, to smooth transitions, and to make it feel more quote-unquote finished. But when you do that too early, you actually lose the structure and clarity that these individual notes are giving you. So as you are learning this, just let the strokes sit, let them feel a bit separate, or raw if you want, and know that that is just part of the process. You can always come back later and soften or adjust if needed, but if you blend too soon, you don't give yourself a chance to really understand what color is actually doing underneath. So for now, just stay disciplined. I know it could be difficult. Place your color note down, leave it, and move forward. And now that I've talked about restraint and letting these notes sit, the next thing to consider, of course, is how edges function within the overall composition. If you look at the painting on the left, the finished painting on the left, there are really two areas that immediately draw your eye. And one is that darker line, the crest line across the wave where the shadow sits, and the other is that rock on the left that I left on purpose, of course, got rid of all those little small pebbles. So right away, the structure of the painting is built around that contrast, dark against light, and of course that's very deliberate. Now within that, the way edges behave becomes really important. Even though I'm placing these distinct strokes, and they're not blended as I mentioned, they're not softened in any way, the transition doesn't feel jarring because of that value structure that I've already built up to this point. It's very controlled. If I'm placing two notes of color next to each other that are very similar in value and temperature, even if the hue shifts slightly, the edge between them remains quiet. I don't know if that makes sense, but each one of those strokes that I place down, even with this squeegee brush, has a distinct edge, left, right, up and down, but because they're so close in value, it doesn't call attention to itself in a way. But where I want it to call attention to itself is that line across, the dark line as well as the rock, because that has the greatest value shift as opposed to some of the other ones. So the moment you introduce a larger jump in value, again light against dark, that edge becomes dominant and it becomes a focal point. So in this case, the darker band along the wave is where the contrast is allowed to happen. That's where the edge becomes sharper, more defined, and I guess in a way more assertive. And it's the same with that little rock there in the front. So to bring it all together, when approaching something like water, it really comes down to a few key ideas. First, simplifying what you see into manageable shapes so you're not overwhelmed by all of the movement. Then learning to see color more clearly, not as objects but as relationships shaped by light and temperature. And then from there, allowing those small individual strokes sit next to each other and letting the broken color do the work instead of blending everything away. And then finally, being intentional with your edges so the painting holds together and the eye knows exactly where to go. That note and structure needs to be on point. And again, none of this is about complexity, it's really about clarity. How you see, how you place, and how you hold back. Very important. Be patient, it's not easy. It may not be evident thus far in the video, but a lot of these strokes are quite thick and in pasto. So let me show you what they look like up close. Thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next video lesson.